Welcome to the Open Forum in the Villages, Florida podcast. In this show, we talk to leaders in the community, leaders of clubs, and interesting folks who live here in the Villages to get perspectives of what is happening here in the Villages, Florida. We are a listener-supported podcast. There will be shout-outs for supporters in episodes. In Season 6, we will continue making substantial improvements to the podcast.
This is Mike Roth. And listeners, I'm thrilled to share with you this podcast, which is my passion project for you. This podcast brings me joy, brings you knowledge, inspiration, and a lot of things that people need to know about the Villages and the people living here. Be sure to hit the follow button to get the newest episode each week. Creating this podcast is a labor of love, even though it demands more time that I can easily spare. Now, here's where you come in. You can help us keep the podcast alive and thriving. How? By becoming a supporter. The easy way for you to support us is to visit our podcast webpage, openforuminthevillagesflorida.com, and click on the supporter button at the top of the page, or the purple supporter box on the right side of the page. Even a small donation of $3 to $10 a month makes a big difference. And guess what? You can cancel your subscription at any time. No strings attached. Your support means the world to us. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep those headphones on. I hope everyone enjoys today's show. This is Mike Roth. I'm here today on Open Forum in the Villages with Mandy Harlan. Thanks for joining me, Mandy.
Thank you for having me.
Mandy, why don't you tell our listeners how you first became aware of cannabis?
I first became aware of cannabis in the medical sense in my early 20s. I had heard about it, of course, as a teenager and in school, but it was always in a very negative regard in terms of it being a drug and say no to drugs. And so it wasn't on my radar then. But when I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune inflammation of my GI tract, I started to hear about it a lot in terms of helping me for my health. And that's when I decided to consider it for myself.
About what year was that?
Oh my, I was 24. I had graduated college in 2006. So it was probably about 2010, 2009, around there.
When you were diagnosed with Crohn's disease, what did your doctors tell you to do?
When I was diagnosed, it was pretty wild. I went in after my colonoscopy, and without really asking me any questions or explaining anything further, my doctor rushed in and had signed me up for a MRI of my lungs, and they were prepping me to make sure that I was healthy enough to take a biologic, which is the medicine that they wanted to put me on. And biologics are those prescriptions on TV where the side effect is literally death. That one. They wanted to put me on that. And I remember saying, whoa, I'm not comfortable with that. Let me do some other research. And so that's when I looked into alternatives, and that's when I really came across cannabis.
Now, how long did it take you in taking cannabis as a regimen to completely beat Crohn's disease?
Yeah. So I'm in full remission. And with autoimmune illnesses and chronic illness, a doctor will argue if it's actually been cured. They'll say it goes into remission. So I don't know. I'd like to argue I've been cured, but I went into remission. It took me probably about 2.5 years for me to really see the full results of it. I started seeing things right away, symptoms getting better, but really full remission about 2.5, 3 years later.
What kind of work were you doing at that time?
So I was doing corporate event planning, which was very stressful, a lot of time pressures, a lot of details to remember. And that weighed heavy on me because stress was my biggest trigger. So I had to take a step back from that when I was diagnosed, because the only way I knew how to help myself was to control my outside environment. I hadn't figured out yet how to treat my body with this disease. So I pulled myself out of the stress.
Did you change your eating pattern? What things you eat? Did you go pure vegetarian or vegan?
I tried things. If you do research, that was the frustrating part, is if you do research, there is no answer. There is no Crohn's diet. There is no one size fits all. It has different triggers. And for some, it could be a salad. For some, it's meat. And so I danced around and tried different things and really came to find that fiber was the only thing that really upset me noticeably.
Really?
So I lowered the fiber in my diet, like no beans. I just started eating beans again. That was really exciting. No broccoli, whole wheat, things like that. And that is what I have honestly still stuck to. And even now I'm just starting to dip my toe back in those foods and you just get nervous. But so far, so
Good. That seems to be working for you.
yeah.
So after you determined that cannabis had actually helped you, how did you get involved with the cannabis industry?
Once I learned the science of cannabis beyond what I was taught in a class as a child, which obviously wasn't good things. Once I learned the science, it made so much sense. It was so logical. It was not complicated. And I thought, why isn't anyone teaching this? Why doesn't everybody know this? It's so easy. And so once I started learning more and more, my desire to teach to other people grew because I would meet and encounter other people that had autoimmunes or chronic pain or conditions that I knew this could help them. And if they just learned or relearned, they could really ease their suffering and ease their symptoms. So I started working with the dispensaries after I was on social media first. I shared everything I knew on social media and they saw me and they liked the education and information that I was presenting and the way that I was presenting it. And so they actually came and found me and asked me to work for their community outreach programs, which is essentially a chance to go and educate the general public or even current patients about medical cannabis.
Okay, this is medical cannabis in Florida where that is legal.
Correct. Yep. Our medical program. So we have about 800,000 patients in the state of Florida at this point. Our medical program is about 5 years old. We have 22 million residents in the state of Florida. So that just gives you an idea that close to 1 million of them are patients. So it's a pretty established and substantial program here.
Right. It's a critically intense program for a patient where they have to go back to a doctor every 6 or 7 months.
It is. Florida puts some rules in place. Yep, you have to go to your doctor. There are certified doctors that can medical cannabis. It's not every doctor. You have to find those particular ones, which there's over 2,500 in the state. We've got a lot of options, and you have to see them every 7 months. And then you have to renew your card with the state every year.
So here in the Villages area, how many cannabis certified physicians are there?
Think of at least 5 off the top of my head. They're not all created equal. I always have to give that caveat. Some doctors are very hands-on. So there's one here in the Villages that is very hands-on, explains things very well, goes into a lot of detail, and will also recommend products. But then there's also doctors who are literally just going to sign the piece of paper and send you on your way and maybe answer a question or two. So you really get a range of care. And sometimes you have to try different ones to find looking for. But most of the time, even when you find the doctor you're looking for, may not hold your hand as much as you might need. So then that's where I come into play and can act as a continuing coach of sorts, because sometimes it takes a minute to dial in a routine.
So you have cannabis coaching clients.
I do. So
how does that work?
So I work with people one-on-one who are either current patients and have not found what is working for them yet. So we work together to tweak their regimen and to understand it a little bit better so that they know what tool to reach for, how and when. And I also work with people who are considering it and really just feel overwhelmed by the information or the lack of information. And we chat about their goals and if cannabis can help them or if it's been shown anecdotally or in studies to help whatever it is they're looking to achieve. And then I will work with them to do.
We hear regularly about the CBD oils in cannabis, and that there were claims that those oils actually work. That's not my opinion. Is it your opinion that they actually work?
I hope that it's not only my opinion, but my body is the living example of it. My life is the living example that it works.
That the CBD works.
Yeah. When I first got started in cannabis, of course, THC is what gets you high. It's what gives you the euphoric effect.
The hallucinogenic effect of
It can.
marijuana.
Yep, it can. And so that's the sister that everybody knows. That's the popular girl.
Yeah, that's the old Mary Jane.
That's right. But cannabis actually has 114 different cannabinoids. So in addition to THC, there's CBD, there's CBG, there's CBA. I won't name them all. It starts sounding like alphabet soup. But each one is a unique molecule that has a unique effect on the body. CBD is a massive anti-inflammatory. I say CBD is like nature's Advil, where THC is nature's Tylenol. They're doing different things. One is helping by actually going to the root and the cause of the symptom. The other one is just treating the symptom. So when I first got started, I thought, oh, CBD is bullshit. No, this is just diet weed. Nobody wants this. And the very first convention I went to was a CBD convention. And I learned so much about it. And I thought I should be taking this. And that's when I started taking CBD regularly. And it just shifted everything.
So you take that as a gummy?
I take a capsule. So it comes in a bunch of different forms. For me, I like a capsule. They make it in a tincture, which is just a liquid that goes under your tongue. They make it in gummies. I like a capsule because for me, I'm trying to get it to go to my gut. That's where my inflammation is. So the capsule gets further down where I need it to go. And I take that every day.
What is your opinion of the attempt now in Florida to legalize marijuana for recreational purposes?
I have mixed opinions, which would probably surprise people. The most important thing to me is access. Whether you're a medical patient, and I think even a lot of people who consume recreationally do so medically without the knowledge of. But when you go recreational in a state, it opens access, which is a beautiful, wonderful thing. It lowers costs and barriers of entry for people to explore the world of cannabis, which is really beneficial for people who might have an ailment but might feel nervous about going to see a doctor about it. Just gives more options and opens more doors. However, it could also change the way the medical program is operated here in Florida. So patients might go away. We might lose our medical program. We'll use Colorado as an example. They decided to keep their medical program in addition to going recreational. What does that mean? It means that patients don't get taxed on their products. It means that patients have access to higher dosages, higher milligrams. It means that the dispensaries are open later for patients. There's certain benefits that patients still receive in a recreational market when we maintain a medical market as well.
The ballot initiative, which people are going to vote on in a couple of weeks here in Florida, does that maintain the separation of medical and recreational marijuana, or is it just a catch-all then if it passes?
As of right now, it doesn't talk about the medical program and what would happen to it. So right now, it's a separate vote. We're voting on recreational. And then it's after that that I think we find out what happens to our medical program. But the state of Florida is also supposed to issue 20 new licenses to new dispensaries within the medical program this coming year. So that's already on the docket. That's already in the works. Applications have already been submitted. It doesn't feel like the medical program would go away, but if rec comes to the state, it just throws some more wood into the fire that we've already got burned, if that makes sense.
To me, it doesn't make sense to keep the medical program if, in fact, it's legal statewide. And then the other question I've been burning up to ask, if it's not really bad for you, why is the federal government putting its nose in it for all these years, criminalizing possession or using marijuana?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the other reason we don't want patients to go away is because Dispensaries, when it goes recreational, it's just like any corporation where the numbers and the dollars are. So what's the quickest and easiest thing to market? It's recreational. So the education, people like me that were part of the dispensaries will no longer be employed by dispensaries. People that are seeking medical information about cannabis will have a harder time finding it if the medical program goes away. It's lovely for someone like myself because then I'm the person that can provide the information, but that's the catch-22. They now have more access to product, but there's less information being shared. So that's the first part of that question. The second part is, why does the federal government put so many people in jail and make it illegal when they know it was beneficial? It was all politics. Shock. Surprise.
No kidding. Politics in this country.
Could you imagine? It was all political. And I think that's the really frustrating thing, and why we have to say we're relearning cannabis is because the information that was shared was propaganda. It was just, I don't even want to say assumptions, because it wasn't even assumptions. It wasn't even what was being observed. It was politics. It was racial. It was yucky. And it's something that makes me upset because it stops people from looking into this plant as an alternative that is natural and safe. And it prevents people from doing that or puts up a wall when really it's quite the opposite. It's one of the safest things that you can try. Yeah.
Okay. And to me, it's a question of if smoking was bad for us and the federal government allowed that for all of those years. And we're talking about people who can use marijuana in a capsule form or as a liquid under the tongue. It doesn't seem like that's bad at all.
No. And here's the ironic part. So this one got me. In 1984, so at the height of the war on drugs, the federal government contracted a pharmaceutical company to make a drug called Marinol. Marinol is synthetic THC. It mimics marijuana completely, but made by a pharmacist. Marinol is still prescribed today by the federal government and that same pharmacy to people with terminal illnesses, I think HIV and AIDS. It's very ironic that they locked people up for this drug that had absolutely no medicinal value and was put as a Schedule I drug, but yet created the exact same mimic of that molecule and still prescribes it today. Just tells you the sense in it all.
This is Mike Roth and Dr. Craig Curtis speaking about Alzheimer's disease. Dr. Curtis, can you talk about alcohol use and Alzheimer's?
Yes, Mike. They have had studies out for years that show those that have 1 to 2 drinks a day actually have a lower risk of heart attack or stroke. And in a study published...
That's interesting. That means that people who totally abstain from alcohol have a higher risk?
That's a difficult question, Mike. It's yes, those that abstain from alcohol, not with Alzheimer's disease, but actually had a slightly higher risk of heart attack and stroke. However, so this was a study published in June of 2023 in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology in stress signaling in the brain. So essentially, they had less stress, which we've always known is a risk factor for a heart attack or stroke. But the American College of Cardiology currently is not advocating for the use of alcohol to reduce your risk of heart attack or strokes because of other concerning effects of alcohol on health.
With over 20 years of experience studying brain health, Dr. Curtis's goal is to educate the Villages community on how to live a longer, healthier life. To learn more, visit his website, craigcurtismd.com, or call 352-500-5252 to attend a free seminar.
A lot of people want to talk about marijuana's use for cancer. Okay, what is your opinion about that?
Yeah. So I'm always of the firm belief, and I will, with most things, there's some times that I know we can't get there through just crawling, but I go crawl, walk, run. When someone comes to me, even with cancer, we're not jumping into the THC. We're not diving into the deep end right away. We're going to crawl before we run. So I always start someone on a CBD regimen. CBD is your foundation. It's like a multivitamin. Everyone should be on it every day, in my opinion. It keeps your endocannabinoid system healthy. Your endocannabinoid system is in your body. It is what the marijuana interacts with to create relief of symptoms, inflammation, which is typically the cause of chronic pain, anxiety, or stress, same
So
thing.
the CBD taken internally, it's your opinion, would be a great analgesic pain reliever.
To start, most of the time, that will get us where we need to go because it's reducing inflammation, which is the typical cause of the chronic pain. Sometimes it's not enough. So you stay on that CBD regimen, and then maybe if it's not enough and you're still having pain or you're still not able to go to sleep, then we layer in some THC to that. So for a cancer patient, I would say the same thing. First, the CBD is going to give your body a healthier foundation to stand on while you're going through these treatments, while you're putting your body through this stress. Then if you start having symptoms, because not all cancer patients will have symptoms, but maybe the chemotherapy is starting to make you feel nauseous.
Right.
Maybe you're starting to
biggest
get
hurdle.
some pain. Yeah. And the CBD is not cutting it anymore. Then we'll layer in some THC. The only caveat is if you're having chemotherapy, you cannot consume THC orally like an edible. It will be processed by your liver. And in doing so, it can negate the effect of the chemotherapy. So no edibles while on chemotherapy, edibles. So instead, you typically do have to go the inhalation route. And that can be with a vaporizer, where it's like an oil. It could be with flower, where you're using a good old-fashioned joint.
Okay.
They also have dry flower vaporizers now, where it's like a little oven, little portable oven.
Good.
So there's no combustion. And then usually it's the smoking or inhalation of THC that will stimulate appetite. It will scramble the signal to the brain, and it does so in various ways. And in that scramble, that's where the appetite comes from. That's where the pain relief comes from.
So is there any way to use any form of cannabis to get the reverse effect of weight loss?
So they actually were playing with, so you've got different classifications of THC, and it's a plant. That's what I always, don't forget it's a plant, just like any other plant that's out there. So if you've got an orange plant, a citrus orange plant, there's obviously different varieties of those citrus orange plants. Cannabis is no different. So just like those different orange varieties might taste different or look different. So there's sativa plants and there's indica plants. Sativa is like a cup of coffee. They wake you up. They make your brain go fast. Indica, think indica in the bed, make you sleepy, tired, and relaxed. Those are the best for pain. Those are the best for appetite stimulation. Sativas, because I think when you have a cup of coffee, sometimes you don't get hungry. Same thing. So sativas will typically cut the edge off of munchies or feeling hungry. There's also THCV. Remember that alphabet soup?
Yeah, okay, here we get some alphabet soup.
Yeah,
now we're up to letter V.
So that's another one. THCV is THC, it's just the molecule slightly different. And supposedly they're calling that one the skinny weed because when you smoke it, it curbs your appetite. Don't have it in Florida. We might, again, medically know any medical benefit. I'm sure there are. That's what it's been famous for so far. You'll find it in California and Colorado, but we don't have it over here quite yet that I'm aware of.
Now we have a few minutes left, so I wanted to ask you, with the only one ballot initiative coming up for marijuana in November, should people vote yes or no?
I think people should vote yes because it's access, it's movement, it is progression. That doesn't mean that there won't be parts of it that have to be tweaked or written out to include medical, or there'll be aspects that we will have to still fight for, but it's access and it's legalities that finally say that this plant doesn't need to be criminalized anymore. So I will always say yes to legalization.
Good. Now, if our listeners want to get a hold of you after the show to either ask you questions or find out more information, what are the ways they can do that?
There's a handful of ways. If you're in the Villages, I run the Villages Medical Marijuana Club, and we meet the second Tuesday of every month, the Lake Meona Recreation Center. You can find us in the catalog of clubs. We are an official club. We get that question a lot.
You're a lifestyle club.
Yes, they know we're actually under other. We are under other, which I love because it says we think outside of the box and advocate for ourselves in any way we have to. So there's that. I'm always there, second Tuesday of the month.
Are the free samples?
That's also the second most popular. So there is with CBD. We typically will have some CBD companies that, like you said, sometimes it doesn't work. And it's typically because the product itself maybe wasn't the best quality. There's a lot of stuff on the market that's not good. So I bring in vetted, certified CBD companies that I use myself. So sometimes they do give free samples.
Ooh.
Very nice. You can also email me, which is
Mandy@thefm.com.
at theflm.com. It stands for Florida Marijuana Mentor. So if it's easier, you can also find my website, which is floridamarijuanamentor.com.
So in that capacity, are you really an employee and salesperson for one of the dispensaries?
No, I've worked for a total of 3 of them because that's just the cannabis world. It changes quickly and one gets over the other and it's just how it goes. But no, even when I was there, so there are currently 22 dispensaries in the state of Florida.
And how many of them are here in the Villages area?
You've got at least 10 of them. And I would say you've got at least 15 different stores. Some of them are repeats you'll even see.
The same company owns 2 or 3 stores.
Yeah, within a 40-minute radius. So even then, even when I worked for a specific dispensary, I would always recommend products from others, including my own. They all have their own specialties. Some are really good for their edibles. Some are really good for their flower. And I will always advocate for the patient rather than the dispensary.
So you are an independent source of information
I
as
am.
opposed to an employee source.
Correct. I left the dispensary world about 2 years ago. Corporate cannabis is no different than any corporate, even with the cannabis at the end. And I just got too far away from my passion of working with patients. And I didn't want to be in the space of just making it look cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's not why I'm here. So I've not worked with the dispensary for a couple of years now.
So was it hard to become a new patient?
No. So when you go see your doctor, it takes maybe about, 15, 20 minutes. It's very quick. If you want to stay longer, you might have a doctor that'll talk to you longer. You may not.
The doctor's appointment to get a medical marijuana
quick.
card.
No, maybe half an hour,
Okay,
and then you get your card right away. So big improvement in the state of Florida. When our program first started, people would die before they would get their cards, literally. Then it took 3 weeks, and now you get it within 30 minutes. It shows up in your email, and you can take that to the dispensary and shop right away.
Okay. But I was talking about becoming a client of yours to get personal on what to be buying to try.
No, you'll usually talk to me within a week or less.
Okay.
Yeah, or quick. And I'm up in the Villages regularly. So I meet in person and virtually. So even if you're not in Florida and not in the Florida medical program, if you're in a legal state, I can help you there as well.
Okay, so you work over something like that.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's all cannabis. Just different packages and bells and whistles, but it's all from the same beautiful plant.
Thanks for joining us, Mandy.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here, and I appreciate your openness to this conversation and topic. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much.
Remember, our next episode will be released next Friday at 9 a.m. Should you want to become a major supporter of the show or have questions, please contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. This is a shout out for supporters Tweet Coleman, Ed Williams, Paul Sorgen, and major supporter Dr. Craig Curtis at K2 in the Villages. We will be hearing more from Dr. Curtis with short Alzheimer's tips each week. If you know someone who should be on the show, contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. We thank everyone for listening to the show. The content of the show is copyrighted by Rothvoice 2024. All rights reserved.